Hey everybody, Maverick Christian here. While not all atheists are irrational, some are so irrationally committed to atheism they would sooner believe there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun than abandon atheism. In this episode, I'll explain why this strange phenomenon occurs and briefly sketch an argument against atheism. Part 1. Yes, some atheists are like this. So imagine to a lot of people, an atheist being more willing to believe that there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun than they are willing to believe that atheism is false does sound like fanatical irrationality. While a religious believer can be fanatically irrational about their religion, can an atheist be that fanatically irrational about atheism? The short answer is yes, atheist moral nihilists have existed. Moral nihilism denies morality's existence, says nothing is morally wrong, not even torturing infants just for fun. Example of an atheist moral nihilist is this guy, J. L. Mackie, who wrote Ethics, Inventing Right and Wrong. Now, moral nihilists can, of course, still have preferences for human behavior. They can be just as opposed to the torture of infants as much as anybody else. In fact, their behavior is often suspiciously similar to those who do believe in morality. In Chapter 5 of Miracles, C.S. Lewis writes, "A moment after they have admitted that good and evil are illusions, you will find them exhorting us to work for posterity, to educate, revolutionize, liquidate, live and die for the good of the human race. Whether right with indignation, like men proclaiming what is good in itself and denouncing what is evil in itself, not at all like men recording that they personally like mild beer, but some people prefer bitter. They know far better than they think they know." It's almost as if on some level they really do believe in morality, and since it doesn't seem reasonable to believe that there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun, why would some atheists embrace such a horrendously implausible view? Part 2. Why? Why would some atheists deny morality's existence? Well, as it turns out, upon closer inspection, atheism doesn't fit in all that well with the existence of morality, particularly objective morality, moral objectivism being the view that there are moral truths that hold independently of our belief and perception of them. Objective morality does fit in extremely well with theism. On a theistic worldview, it makes perfect sense there be some component of reality transcending our opinion that says people shouldn't do certain things. But now let's suppose atheism is true. On atheism, moral wrongness is a very strange property when you think about it. It's invisible, non-physical, and empirically undetectable. So why shouldn't a consistent atheist reject the existence of this invisible, non-physical thing that cannot be empirically detected, if the atheist does reject the existence of invisible, non-physical deities that have allegedly not been empirically detected? Given atheism, it seems more likely that people's belief in moral wrongness is a delusion brought about by evolution to get us to behave in certain ways and help our species survive. Given atheism, moral wrongness probably doesn't exist. I agree with those atheists who think it's likely the case that if atheism is true, then real moral wrongness doesn't exist. But then it follows that if some things are morally wrong, like torturing infants just for fun, then atheism is probably false. So morality's existence would then constitute evidence against atheism. An atheist agreeing that if atheism is true, then moral wrongness doesn't exist creates a dilemma for that atheist. They can either A, reject atheism as false, or B, believe there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun. I don't know about you, but if I learned that my religion taught there is nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun, I'd abandon that religion. Similarly, the rational atheist in this dilemma would reject atheism here. But some atheists cling to atheism so firmly they are instead more willing to believe there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun. Which is crazy, but in my experience this is surprisingly common among atheists. It's even worse than it might seem because there are also what I call stealth moral nihilists. People who claim to believe in morality but really don't. It's not that they're lying necessarily, there's actually a more interesting explanation. Part 3. Stealth moral nihilists. Sometimes we use oughts and shoulds that are entirely descriptive. For example, when "if you want to do well in school, you ought to study" just means something like, as a matter of practical necessity, you need to study to do well in school. Let's say that a descriptive ought is any ought that is nothing more than some purely descriptive state of affairs. The prescriptive ought is that type of ought that isn't a descriptive ought. It prescribes without being purely descriptive. An example might be someone saying you should not torture infants just for fun. Some atheists redefine morality so that moral oughts are entirely descriptive, because it's that prescriptive sort of ought that is very problematic on atheism. To see why the moral ought being prescriptive makes morality metaphysical, let's define natural facts as facts that can be stated entirely in the language of psychology and the natural sciences. Examples include the atomic number of gold is 79, Sue is happy and healthy, and the Earth orbits the Sun. Notice that natural facts are descriptive facts. Thus, we have the following argument. Premise 1. All natural facts are descriptive. Premise 2. Moral ought facts are not descriptive. It is false that moral oughts have no properties besides purely descriptive ones. Conclusion, therefore moral ought facts are not natural facts. So that's actually a simplified version of a more rigorous philosophical argument I'll link to in the description below. Suffice to say for now though that if moral oughts are prescriptive oughts, then morality is non-natural. In the absence of supernatural intervention, moral wrongness being non-natural makes it empirically undetectable. Why? Well, moral wrongness is non-natural, and anything outside the natural world causally interacting with the natural physical world would by definition be supernatural. If moral wrongness can't causally interact with the physical world, and it can't bounce photons off it, can't touch it, can't do anything of the sort to empirically detect it. So, barring the supernatural, moral wrongness is causally inert and empirically undetectable. Which then raises the question, if morality exists, how do we know about it? Well, the theist could believe that God, using superintended evolution, designed our cognitive faculties in such a way that when they're functioning properly, we intuitively apprehend morality's existence. So awareness of morality would become a kind of God-given intuitive knowledge. On atheism, though, our moral intuition isn't God-given, but merely the product of physical processes. So, given atheism, if morality can't causally interact with the physical world, then those physical processes would give us the same intuitions of morality's existence regardless of whether morality existed. That would seem to undercut such intuition from properly justifying our belief in morality. But if on atheism we can't rely on moral intuition to believe in morality, nor can we empirically detect morality, then on atheism it seems like we wouldn't have any good reason to believe that morality exists. Side note. Even though I give some sort of fancy philosophical arguments in this episode, people don't necessarily need them to intuitively grasp ideas like moral wrongness is non-physical and we can't see it. I mean, I think those facts will be obvious to a lot of smart people who've reflected on morality's existence. Hopefully going through these steps helps explain and make clear why, to some people, morality seems very strange on atheism, why some atheists would think that morality has no more real existence than an invisible dragon in my garage. Suppose you're an atheist who wants to say that some things are morally wrong, but you don't believe in that troublesome moral ought. Solution: redefine the word ought so that it's purely descriptive. That way it's not so metaphysical. Problem: most people aren't using the descriptive ought when talking about moral obligations. They have in mind the prescriptive ought. Solution: don't believe that most people are using the prescriptive ought when talking about stuff like moral wrongness. It may sound strange, but I've seen a number of atheists go through this sort of thought process, namely redefining morality to use entirely descriptive oughts and just not believing most people are using that other type of ought. It's not that they're lying necessarily, I think it's more like a psychological defense mechanism to avoid having to say that they deny morality's existence. If you want to see this for yourself, this actually happened in one of my debates when I was trying to use objective morality as evidence for theism. I didn't use the terms descriptive ought and prescriptive ought in the debate. I used slightly different terminology, but the general idea was the same. It eventually became clear that my opponent was using the descriptive ought when he claimed to believe in objective morality. When I told him that's not the sort of ought most people have in mind when they speak of morality, he didn't believe me. Part 4. Conclusion. Moral nihilism says nothing is morally wrong and denies morality's existence. Moral objectivism says there are moral truths that hold independently of our belief and perception of them. Objective morality fits in extremely well with theism, less so on atheism. So why are some atheists moral nihilists? To a lot of people, it seems that once we're given atheism as true, it seems that morality probably doesn't exist. We can get an idea of why some people might think that by examining certain aspects of morality. On atheism, a property like moral wrongness is very metaphysically strange compared to physical properties like color or size. Moral wrongness is invisible, non-physical, non-natural, and in the absence of the supernatural, it's causally inert, empirically undetectable, and we'd have the same intuitions of morality's existence regardless of whether morality existed. So on atheism, it seems like we wouldn't have any good reason to believe morality exists. I suppose the atheists could get around this barring the supernatural thing by positing something like supernatural powers of clairvoyance giving us moral intuition, but that seems awfully far-fetched. It seems more likely on atheism that we don't have any good reason to believe morality exists, and given how metaphysically strange morality is on atheism, it's understandable why some atheists would think that morality has no more real existence than an invisible dragon in my garage. For some bonus philosophy, this sort of reasoning about how metaphysically queer morality is basically the argument from queerness. To oversimplify it a bit, just as we would think supernatural clairvoyance is far-fetched because of how metaphysically queer it is, properties like moral wrongness are likewise unlikely because of how metaphysically queer they are. I think this philosophical argument works on atheism because invisible, non-natural, causally inert moral wrongness does seem very metaphysically strange on atheism, and on atheism we don't seem to have any good reason to believe it exists. Since it's likely on atheism, we'd have the same intuitions of morality existence regardless of whether morality existed. In contrast, on theism, the idea of a supremely authoritative, non-natural component of reality giving us intuitive awareness of morality's existence isn't so far-fetched. If it is likely the case that if atheism is true then real moral wrongness doesn't exist, then one can use morality as evidence against atheism. Atheists who believe premise 1 to be true here face a dilemma. They can either A. reject atheism as false, or B. believe there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun. Remarkably, some atheists in this dilemma are more willing to believe that there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun than they are willing to believe that atheism is false, which by my lights is a level of irrationality akin to religious fanaticism. Note that if a religious person did the same sort of thing in such a dilemma with their religion, people would think the religious person is fanatically irrational. Some atheists honestly don't see anything morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun because it doesn't fit their narrative of reality. So atheists can be amazingly irrational people, a sort of irrationality akin to religious fanaticism. Now, not all atheists are irrational, and irrationality isn't confined to atheism. Irrational fanatics exist among the religious, among the political left, among the political right, and so forth. What amazes me is that some atheists are irrational about atheism in a way as if atheism were a religion. It's not something I would have expected. So atheists have, for lack of a better term, a sort of PR campaign about how irrational they are that to some degree is influenced even me. It says, we atheists, we're irrational, we're reasonable. But it is not reasonable to believe that there's nothing morally wrong with torturing infants just for fun. And it amazed me how common it was, in my experience, for atheists willing to go that far to believe in atheism as if atheism were a religion. How common? The majority of atheists, in my experience, willing to go that far when I presented morality as evidence against atheism. Now, I'm optimistically assuming that most atheists are not actually like that. Those who are just disproportionately represented on the internet. My experience is not a scientific survey. But yeah, some atheists really are as irrational as a religious fanatic. So why bring this up? Well, there are a number of reasons. One is this, that an atheist PR campaign of rationality I mentioned earlier. It needs to be pointed out that this campaign doesn't necessarily reflect reality. The second reason is that some non-theists, like Godless Cranium, thanks for commenting by the way, have pointed out that some religious believers are crazy irrational, and fair enough, that's a problem. But then it needs to be pointed out that it's not just my side that has this problem. A third reason, and perhaps the most important one, is that I think this is just an interesting sociological phenomenon in its own right. It's interesting that some atheists will be willing to go that far to believe in atheism as if atheism were a religion. And the phenomena that derives from this, self-moral nihilism, is also particularly noteworthy. In case in point, in my first live broadcast debate, we were supposed to be on the discussing that if God does not exist, an objective morality does not exist. My opponent was supposed to disagree with me, but turns out he basically agreed with me all this time because he had just defined morality differently. Would have been nice going that before the debate occurred. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up. This is Maverick Christian inviting you to go in peace, serve the Lord, and love logic. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, hit subscribe and ring the bell.